everyone. I am thrilled to host the inaugural podcast entitled Life Notes with Dr. Wilkins. I am a licensed marriage and family therapist and coach who will host a series of discussions with folks from all walks of life who are navigating life in what I would deem as unique and impressive ways. The theme of this particular life note is single, growing, and thriving. It will be featuring Black women who are above a certain age, we're gonna say, and have curated lives that defy the myth that to be grown and single equates to unhappiness. My first very special guest is Dr. Shola Olabode-Dada, behavioral scientist and explorer, who has created an outstanding lifestyle for herself. But I'm going to let her tell you more about herself as we get into her story. Welcome, Dr. Shola Olabode-Dada.
You can call me Shola, as you know.
Shola, hi.
Thank you. I am very happy to be here.
Yes, I am happy to have you and thrilled that you're giving of your time. So where would you like to start in introducing yourself? I've given a snippet, but you tell us more.
Yeah. Okay. I am from Chicago. I prioritize my Black identity, my Black woman identity, and I am of Nigerian descent as well as a Black American. And I have been trained as a psychologist, been working in the field of public health for years, my whole life nearly. But now I have decided to take a sabbatical and just explore who I am through travel. And that's been my life for the past about year and a half. Yeah.
Wonderful. And I know that there are some amazing intricacies and nuances in your story. And so talk to me in the areas that you feel comfortable. Moving from behavioral scientist to navigating the world. What did that look like? How did that come to pass?
Well, it was prompted by a layoff. So in 2022, after I moved to Rwanda for my job, I was laid off in July of that year. And it's not the first time that I had been unemployed, but it was the first time I was living in an unfamiliar space unemployed. And I wasn't as scared as I thought I would be. I just decided that I was going to travel. And so I started doing small trips around the continent. And while I was actually looking for a job at that time, nothing was panning out. And I decided by the beginning of 2023 that I was not going to look for a job anymore. And I was just going to continue traveling because that was fulfilling to me. I decided that my identity wasn't only about work and what I do for a living. So I continued to travel, and that's kind of how I got to this place.
So super dope that you talked about it wasn't as scared as you thought it was going to be. And I mean, emotionally, there's a bunch of different places that you can go after you get laid off, and the fact that you were like balancing between fear and bravery is interesting. What is it about your composition that caused you to be like, am I afraid to just be going around the world? What is it about your background, who you are?
Well, I kind of always had this interest I always had an interest in living abroad, and I always had an interest in exploring, particularly the African continent. And this was my chance. I just felt like this was a once in a lifetime type of chance. And I needed to embrace it and embrace the uncertainty. I was more fearful of not identifying with my job because I didn't have a job. That was what I was most fearful of, not the being abroad, not the traveling, nothing. It was just like, what do I do? Who am I without a job?
Mm-hmm. I
Yeah.
mean, because you've been doing this, you say it so naturally. And I think maybe you don't realize how radical the way that you were thinking about that. You were thinking about, so who's my identity outside of my job? And I'm also like, but Shola, to be a woman of a certain age, what's your identity outside of a job? Societally, what's your identity outside of being a mom? Societally, what's your identity outside of being coupled? Like, did you wrestle with any of that other stuff that I think many women in your same shoes would be in?
Yeah, definitely. Well, I do not have any children, and I also am not in a relationship right now. Those type of questions have come about at different phases of my life. And I have wrestled with them and then also come to terms at this point with where I'm at and embracing just who I am right now, regardless of that absence. It is part of my story, but it also has given me the freedom to do what I want and without having to feel obligated or responsible for anyone but myself. Really, yes, I have family, and yes, I attend to them, and I try to be there for them. But outside of that, nothing was um kind of holding me back or restraining me from doing the things that I had dreamed of doing, which was traveling, living abroad, and meeting new people solo, all solo. I had only taken maybe one trip. Before all of this started, I had taken one solo trip, and now that's all I take.
Amazing. And like, I'm wondering, because you know how it looks in our community. Folks being like, girl, when you gonna get married? Girl, where the kids at?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And so how did you like firmly step into who you've been meant to be? That's how I'm gonna frame it. Despite the whispers, despite the stuff.
I like that framing, the whispers, because it's whispers from other people, but it's the whispers in your mind as well.
Mm.
Um I I think I rather live in I don't know, and it sounds so corny, but rather live in greatness than live in like suffering and misery. And that to me, like focusing on the lack, the absence of something not being there just seemed like misery. And I didn't want to do that. While yes, I desire a relationship, yes, I desire kids, but I had to, I don't know, approach it differently and see it from a different perspective. I'm following the guidance of the universe in my mind, and this is where I need to be. And when those things come, I'll embrace them when it's time.
I love that. Also, I would rather live in greatness than live in suffering. Girl, that needs to be on a t-shirt, on a bumper sticker. Don't try to snatch from Shola because she's gonna brand it. Um, and I'm also curious about my limited knowledge of Nigerian Americans and like, pressures in terms of, you come to the United States, you're supposed to do this. I think I've been told there's two careers, MD, what is it, MD or lawyer? And so something. And like, I'm wondering culturally, like, were there any unique pressures around like, no, I'm going to set out and do this, despite the fact that culturally I'm supposed to be like doing this amazing thing in the States. But tell me if I'm wrong
Yeah.
about my understanding.
Well, I wasn't raised in Nigerian culture. I wasn't raised with my father. It's my father who is Nigerian. But I knew his family and I would be in touch with them periodically throughout my life. So I didn't have the same cultural pressures that other maybe Nigerian American people have had who have both parents as Nigerian. But as I grew older and then grew closer to my uncle on my father's side, I would get that. Oh, when are you going to get married? When are you going to do whatever it is. It's all about like the milestones of what it is to be a woman.
Mm,
And marriage is definitely that. And also having children, of course. But I let them know that yes, I do want that. And I can't control when that decides to make its way into my life. Because I'm not going to just settle for anything, nor am I going to seek it out like that's my priority. That is not my priority. My
mm,
priority is to live and to be fulfilled and be joyful. And if that includes marriage, if that includes children, then I'm happy with that.
mm,
But they now know not to ask me that question, those questions, because they know I want it, but I have no control. This whole experience, especially as it relates to the traveling and traveling solo, and also being laid off and not having a job this whole time, it's been about embracing the uncertainty and living in it and being comfortable with it. Yes, it's uncomfortable, but you grow to be comfortable with it. And that I cannot control. I cannot control whether I'm in a relationship or whether I have children. That's not my goal in life. And I'm okay with that,
mm,
to not be in control. That took a long time to get there, but I'm okay with it.
mm. Beautiful. And as you're talking, what struck me is that like it's so much a part of the African American experience, the idea of like figuring out how to survive despite uncertainty.
Mm, mm, yeah. Mm, yes, because I just went to the African American Museum in DC again. Gosh, and it's just so amazing. It's interesting how they highlighted all the greatness, but all the suffering we went through. And that's history.
Mhm.
That's part of our history.
Yes.
And it's memorialized in the museum. But there was no control.
Mhm.
Yeah, there was no control. We just
Mhm.
keep doing it, living it, surviving it, whatever it is, whatever it takes.
Yeah. And so this idea of there being like at this point in time of African American history that like there's supposed to be a script that is going to insulate us.
Hmm.
Um, you know what I mean? Like a conservative script that is going to keep us safe and like we're supposed to follow those rules. Um, that's new. That's some new historical stuff. Do you know what I'm saying?
Mm. Well, I mean, I don't know if it's new. I'm
Mhm.
sure that especially prior to the enslavement of our people, I'm sure those cultural norms existed. But once African Americans were brought to to the Americas and to the US, we're adopting the norms of this other group of people. So
Mhm.
that's where we are.
And in the African American context, though, migration has been part of the African American story. Like we've been like, all right, I'm not thriving here. Yeah, we got to go up north. All right,
Hmm.
I'm not thriving here. Yeah, let's go on back on south. You know, and now there's like this new moment, I think, occurring where Black folks are saying, like, actually, let's bust out of these borders now.
Yes, yes. I didn't even think about it like that. Yes, I agree. I
Mhm.
agree.
Mhm.
Especially African American women, because that's all I met for the most part.
Yeah. Okay. Let's talk about the travels
Okay.
because you've been around the world. So
Yeah.
you're being humble. Okay. So the layoff happened in Rwanda.
Hmm.
And then for Rwanda, where did you go? And let's say, like, with each travel point, what was the precipitating why? Like, not only where did you go, but the why did you go there?
Mm. Okay. Um, okay, from Rwanda, like I said, I do some small trips and we either with friends or by myself. But those weren't meant to, I hadn't left Rwanda. Rwanda's still my base. So just to like fill in the gaps, I was in Kenya, I was in Zanzibar, Then I decided, oh, I'm going to go to Senegal because I was feeling, I don't know, inspired to go there. My mom had went there when she was younger, traveling abroad during her college years, and I wanted to kind of walk in those footsteps and know the country she had visited when she was younger. So I went to Senegal and fell in love. I really enjoyed Senegal, and that's what gave me the courage and the inspiration to decide to uproot myself from Rwanda and start traveling around. So I decided to move back, I mean, go back to Rwanda, sell all my stuff, and then I was going to start my traveling, my journey. I went to Cote d'Ivoire briefly, and only because I'm interested in Francophone countries, and I had heard some good things about Cote d'Ivoire, Abidjan, and so I wanted to experience it, and I thought I would stay longer. But what I have realized is a lot of Francophone countries, particularly in West Africa, are so crazy expensive. And so I couldn't sustain staying there for more than a week because it was just too expensive in terms of accommodations. Now I have a certain level of standards in terms of where I would stay, so I won't go into all that. But I have blew my budget for Cote d'Ivoire, so I only stayed there a week. And then I had a place to stay in Senegal, so I went back to Senegal. So this would have been my about, I think, second month or so. Yeah, or something. Yeah, second month in Senegal. Stayed there, and I was actually, because I was so inspired when I went the first time, I was actually considering, could I live here? Met some wonderful people, but I felt this is where I started figuring out what I need as like the deal breakers. What were the deal breakers in terms of deciding where to live um, in general in the world? So I realized in Dakar, it was not a walkable city for me. So I decided to move on. It was not walkable. I just didn't feel like I could connect with the city without feeling comfortable walking around. So that was a big determining factor. Decided to then go back to the US. I had met while I was in Senegal. This is kind of a long story, so please cut me off. But while I was in Senegal, I met this woman named Laysan, and she was a friend of a friend, and she told me that she created these wellness retreats, and it was so intriguing. And I had never even heard of a wellness retreat, but she said she did them in St. Lucia and she did them in Medellin, Colombia. And I was like, Colombia? Never, ever had that been a country on my radar. But I was so intrigued. I just said, I'm coming. And we kept in touch. I didn't have the money, at least in my mind. It didn't seem feasible, but I didn't have to worry about the how. The universe, where that was for the universe to figure out. And I was heading to Colombia. So I via Chicago, California, and then Montreal, I landed in Colombia, which is where I met you and stayed there for 3 months, even after I went to the retreat. So I did the retreat and just stayed there because I felt so comfortable living in that space. So that was the kind of beginning of my journey.
That's a lifetime of travel. Plus, for most people, I'm intrigued. If that was the beginning, then what did the other half look like?
Yeah, quite different. The other
Okay.
half was so different. I don't know if I should say this on, but I'm proud of it. I did a mushroom trip, and that kind of, I like to do mushrooms when I'm in a point of transition, and I was seeking clarity. So I did the trip, and in that trip, I told myself, you're going to go to Sweden, Portugal, and Italy in that order. And that's exactly what I did. Yeah.
Amazing, amazing. So the mushroom trip
Yeah.
allowed the
Yeah.
access.
I
Mhm.
believe it's truth. It's just,
Mhm.
I mean, inner truth. We seek so much external validation, and just external information as if that is truth, but it's all inside of us. And that's what I feel like the mushrooms give access to.
Mm-hmm. Made you receptive to what was already there. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so if I'm a viewer, I'm gonna be like, this girl has got to be a majillionaire.
Yeah.
Um, so without breaking down dollars and cents, I saw you're not a majillionaire, right?
Yeah,
So how
no,
the heck,
definitely
how
not.
did this, how, because it seems impossible financially for most people.
In a way, and people keep asking me that, and I do feel like, yes, I could tell you all the factual things that happened that made it possible. But in a sense, I do feel like it was magic. I did not have a ton of money saved. I didn't. I really didn't. Um, Money came when it needed to come. So, for instance, I did very small severance. I did receive some money for unemployment. I did receive some money for a claim that I filed because my storage unit had flooded in California. So
Okay.
it's just little parts that kind of came together to make it possible. Then in terms of finding what do you call it, plane tickets and such, using frequent flyer miles, using my points on my credit card. Because I mean, as you, especially given where I was, I'm kind of living off my credit card to a certain extent. And it's then allowing me, as in a cyclical kind of way, then allowing me to travel because of those points that I'm accumulating. So those are some of the examples of how I made it logistically possible, but I still believe it was magic because I don't know. I don't know exactly how it all worked out. And to be able, I'm kind of a person that I like to live in luxury. That's just who I am. I do not skimp on anything in terms of comfort. And so I'm not living in hostels when I'm going to these places. So that's why I feel like it's magic for me to have been able to afford all those little things. Yeah, money just came when I, and all you money came when it needed to come, but I also trying to change my relationship to money and not believe in scarcity. So
Mhm.
that's where I'm at, and that's how it came to be.
I love that. Okay, so you know your girl likes nice things, as you learn in Colombia. And I know that like you did have some, being someone who likes luxury, you did like do little tips and tricks. Like what are little
Mhm.
things that you would do, to help you sustain financially?
Well, I definitely liked, and this was surprising to me. I used to live by myself for, I don't know, over 17 years or so. But then when I started traveling, particularly solo, I would look for Airbnbs where in which I'm living with the host. And those are usually cheaper experiences. So living with the host was one of the things that I would prefer to do because it was a way to get immediately plugged into the culture of the
Mhm.
country and to learn about different, like, the people, but the food and places to go. And I also, as a solo traveler, had company.
Mhm.
And so that was the biggest thing in terms of traveling that I recommended to people who wanted to make it a little more affordable is to do Airbnb with the host. What else did I do? That I don't know. That was probably the biggest thing. And I mean, like I said, using points and frequent flyer miles, that was huge in terms of making it affordable where I'm not paying for my plane tickets, but I am paying for food and accommodations.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I think you take it for granted. You are adventurous in terms of like what you said about ensconcing yourself in the culture. Like that's very real. And like I noticed with transportation that like there were things that you were willing to thrust yourself into that your bougie friends was not. So
Well, yeah, I like taking public transportation if it's possible and if it's not very cumbersome. So I still get I'm still particular. Like if it's more than two modes of transportation, I ain't going. That So, but I definitely and I found that a lot of places had good public transportation. So that wasn't even an issue for me to do that. I mean, if I had to, I'll take a Uber, but sometimes that was even more, especially when I was in Italy, Ubers and taxis weren't as readily accessible as they were in other countries.
Mm,
So
okay.
also I would walk a lot. I walked
Mhm.
a ton.
I remember walking a lot with you. Um, uh, so I'm wondering, because like all of this, you make it sound so easy. But for many people, like there are fears that we've been conditioned to believe about like what certain places external to the United States are like. And I don't know. Do you have any thoughts or advice for folks that are saying, "Oh my gosh, Colombia, Rwanda, and Senegal"? Like, what are what are your thoughts?
Well, I mean, I actually, people, this is why I'm so interested in influence of media. Media can influence anyone in such a impactful way that it feel it can stunt them, stunt their growth, stunt their actions and behaviors. And so people would not go to Colombia, for instance, because they have watched the show Narcos. I hadn't even watched Narcos before. I had no idea what Colombia was like. People talk about the cartels, but it is not even, I mean, not saying that it doesn't exist, because I'm sure it does, but it's nothing like the show. It's nothing like it has been historically. It's a paradise, which is why so many people flock to it. It attracts the bad and the good.
Mhm.
It's a great country to go to.
Yeah.
And so tend to I tend to like to talk to people who have been there, who have explored that country. And if I am not able to talk to someone, I just go. I don't even do a lot of research. I
Mhm.
didn't do any research before I went to Medellin. I didn't do much research for any of the countries. I usually do the research once I'm there and start figuring, okay, where I'm gonna go as a tourist.
Mhm. Amazing, amazing. Okay. And you've made it sound so just doable and glamorous. And talk to me about your scariest moment. What has been,
Uh,
yeah, a story of the scariest moment when you were traveling?
oh, okay. Dang it. Well, do I have a scary moment? I hmm. My scariest moment traveling. Huh. I I know, okay. It's odd to say this, but I did not have, unless you remember me telling you something. I do not have a scary moment where I'm like, oh shit, what the fuck am I gonna, sorry.
You're
I should
fine.
curse.
We're on the internet. We on the internet. It's all good. The Wild West out here.
Well, just being myself.
Yes,
Okay.
please.
I didn't have a scary moment, like nothing that stood out as something where I needed to figure out what to do. But I had a moment where in Rome in particular, where I was just feeling down. I was not connecting to the city. I felt really lonely and I didn't feel comfortable. I just didn't feel comfortable. It wasn't about where I was living in the city. I just didn't feel comfortable in the city.
Mhm.
It didn't resonate like other cities had. And so I was just having a low moment. I just wanted to leave.
Mhm.
And that's when and then I started getting sick that same day. I think the stress of it all was coming down
Yeah.
and manifesting into a cold. That next morning, I was on happened to be on my on Instagram, and my friend from Rwanda had posted said when in Rome, and she had it in her
Uh-huh.
stories. And I was like, people always say that phrase, when in Rome, but she had pizza in her hand. So I'm like, what is going on? So then I just text her, where are you? And she said, I'm in Rome. I'm like, oh my God, I'm in Rome.
Wow.
And so we were able to hang out that day, and it changed and shifted my whole experience. And it was just what I needed. It was just what I needed.
Wow. Wow. I love that. Magic. That's that
Yeah.
magic. Yeah. I always thought you were going to bring up the Blair Witch insect experience.
The Blair Witch insect
Girl,
experience. Where?
when you called me in the middle of the night about the insect.
Oh, yes. Oh, see how much I had blocked that out? Oh my
That's
God.
trauma. That's a trauma response.
That was, you know what? That was scary. Not only I was actually going to this place, seeking this place out for refuge and just like solitude, just serene, like serenity. And it didn't give me none of that. It gave me the complete opposite. I have a phobia of bugs. I don't even want to say its name, but it starts with a C and it's big and brown, and I didn't like it. But I was willing to stay there because I was in nature. But the way they treated me as if I was lying that I saw it, but we're in nature. How could I be lying that this was actually in the house? I felt so uncomfortable. See, that's another thing. It wasn't even about something external that was scaring me. It was more about what was going on internally and what didn't just sit right. That's when I had my scary moments, I suppose.
Yeah. So like navigating the world, a theme that's been throughout everything that you've said is like, if things resonate with
Mm-hmm.
you, or
Mm-hmm.
if things feel dissonant, and that you've
Yeah.
moved with like the things that resonate, you move into, and the things that are dissonant, you move away from. And sometimes when you move away from them, you call your friend Erica, like, girl, I'm in the middle of the woods.
Yes.
And say,
Yes. And
yeah,
I stayed up that whole night, did an all-nighter because I could not sleep comfortably. Mm-mm.
that was a moment. That was a moment.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I'm wondering, we have like touched on it a little bit. What would you say about dating? As the eye roll just said a lot.
Okay.
Yeah, what would you share about dating while you've been on this journey?
I've been more than open to date in the different countries that I've been in. Um, Senegal, I did meet someone and we hung out a lot, and I happened to hang out again with him in Montreal, and we had a good time, but it was meant to be temporary. And the universe showed me that it was meant to be temporary as well. So that was something I let go of. But we had a good time while we did, hang out. So I was grateful for that. Then when I went to Colombia, and also the most of the other countries aside from Sweden, it was just hookup culture. I don't know if that was just my experience, but I was not interested in just hooking up with someone. And that's what it seemed like a lot of the people were there on the apps for. And I was disappointed. Now, I'm not sure if it had anything to do with who I am as a Black woman, that's what the option they were presenting me with, or it could have been because I wasn't there for long and I was just passing through and they thought, oh, this is a good way to do this. So I don't know what it had to do with, but I was just interested in meeting people, connecting with people in a genuine, authentic way, and getting to know someone. And I was able to do that in Sweden, but that's the only place that I was able to date. Yeah.
Not in Italy?
No.
That's a
So
surprise. We are almost done. And like in my fantasy, there is a woman somewhere. Maybe she's our age cohort. Maybe she's younger. Maybe she's older and like, I'm ready, but I'm scared. Like, what advice would you offer them if they were sitting with us? What would you say to them?
I, you know what? So as I mentioned, I went to the African American Museum again, just this month in DC, and they had an Afrofuturism exhibit going
Nice.
on. It's a temporary exhibit, and one of my favorite authors is Octavia Butler,
Mm.
and they have her in an interview saying, "Behave as if you have no limitations."
Mm.
And I don't know, I wish someone had said that to me so long ago. That that really resonated with me because that's what I feel like I'm doing now. And I need to constantly keep that in mind and not allow fear, any type of fear, to drive my actions.
Mm.
Um, so that's what I would say. Behave as if you have no limitations.
Mm.
Mhm.
That's another t-shirt.
But that's according to Octavia Butler.
Well, that's sage advice. And I think that is, if I had to sum up this conversation with the life note theme, that is the life note.
Yeah.
Starting with what you first said, which is live in greatness rather than live in suffering, and
Yeah.
behave as if you have no limitations. That's the notes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you
That
for
was good.
sewing into me. Thank you for sewing into the women out there that are watching this saying, could they do it? Thank you.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Thank you for being part of the inaugural episode of Life Notes with Dr. Wilkins. And I wish you greatness, continued greatness on this journey.
Thank you, Erica.
You're very welcome.